For 50 years, it's been wowing patrons and bringing some of the biggest artists from around the world to Indianapolis. But the facility itself is often considered as much a work of art as any of the performances that take place inside of it.
It's very contemporary in its design, so when people walk in today, they can't believe it's 50 years old. It's a continuous thing to keep the building beautiful, to keep the venerable old lady fit and able to do all these masterful performances here.
Clowes Memorial Hall reshaped the city's cultural landscape. It became a destination for Broadway productions, symphony orchestras, dance troupes, international figures, and cutting-edge artists. The hall was the dream of Dr. George Henry Alexander Clowes, an English chemist who came to Indianapolis in 1919. Now, his grandson, Dr. Alexander Clowes, is researching and writing a biography on his grandfather.
He was very well connected. He was a networker among scientists in the country. And he got wind of the fact that the guys at the University of Toronto had made a discovery that was very interesting. They found that they could extract from the pancreas a material that caused the blood sugar to drop.
They had discovered insulin, but lacked the resources to mass produce it. In 1922, Eli Lilly and Company, led by Dr. Clowes, formed a partnership with the researchers and supplied the country with enough insulin to manage what was until then a fatal condition.
Led to 2 Nobel Prizes, the first Nobel Prizes in Canada, and it led to the Lilly we have today, but it perhaps underpins the development of Indianapolis.
The discovery made Lilly an industry leader and Dr. Clowes a rich man. Throughout the rest of his life, he was an avid art collector and a major donor to the city's cultural organizations. He held leadership roles in the Art Association of Indianapolis, the Heron Art Institute, and the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. After Dr. Clowes' death in 1958, his wife Edith, known affectionately as the Duchess, and youngest son Alan brought the plan to life. They made an agreement with Butler University that the hall would be located on campus and could be used for university activities and touring shows, with the symphony as the primary focus. The family donated $2 of the $3.5 million needed to build the hall, and leaders in the community picked up the rest of the bill.
Good evening. I'm Howard Caldwell. 4.5 years ago, Clowes Hall was just an idea. Tonight, that idea has reached a momentous climax, attracting national attention in both theatrical and non-theatrical fields. Clowes Hall represents the most advanced American and European thinking in design, comfort, and beauty.
You can see the many, many first-nighters as they arrive, as they mill around the lobby in magnificent dress. Hi, Miss Indiana.
Hello, Mr. George.
Well, what do you think of all this, huh?
Oh, I think it's exciting. I think the building is beautiful, and the crowd just brings it to life.
When it opened, it was like the Academy Awards. I mean, it was all formal, all glittery and glitz. Television was out front, and they had red carpet and limousines. It was big time. In some ways, it was probably the shining moment of that decade. Saturday during the day, there were 2 Captain Kangaroo shows. Saturday night, 2 Bob Hope specials.
After an entire weekend of celebration, the Today Show story aired and the reviews were in. Clowes Hall was a hit.
We're talking to Mr. Bob Hope here in the lobby of Clowes Hall. Mr. Hope, how does this compare? First of all, have you played Indianapolis before?
I played Indianapolis so far back. I hate to get gruesome about this thing, but, you know, I passed the Lyric Theater where I played in my early days of vaudeville around here, and I'm surprised that they would invite a hokey act like me into such a gorgeous place.
Indianapolis was on the map. President Kennedy sent a congratulatory letter. Architectural Forum loved the hall's dramatic lines. Fortune magazine called it one of the 10 buildings of the future. And Clowes Hall, and even its manager Travis Selmar, helped advertise everything from suits to radios to Steinways.
It was a turning point, really. I mean, I think people sort of thought, we've got something to offer the world. We're not just a cow town anymore. the days of Indian No Place are on the back burner now. We're moving forward.
Clowes Hall remained in the spotlight through the decades. It was such a state-of-the-art facility that New York's Metropolitan Opera National Company based their first tour from Indianapolis. And in the deep freeze of the Cold War, the State Department selected Clowes as one of the host venues for the Shenyang Acrobats, the first cultural exchange with Communist China. Groups from around the world came to play at Clowes,
from Indianapolis,
and the city's own symphony matured within its walls. By the early 80s, the popularity of Clowes as a multi-purpose facility led to constant struggles between the university, the symphony, and the hall's schedules. In 1984, the symphony left for a home of its own, downtown's renovated Circle Theater.
Released two schools of thought. One school was, Clowes Hall was built for the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. So they were packing up their marbles and leaving, and kind of leaving Clowes a bit in the lurch. But the other general school of thought was the ISO needed to grow and to continue to expand and develop its programming and reach out to new and different audiences. And there just was not enough availability. I mean, Clowes was in such high demand because it had been built to accommodate a wide range of activity and users that the ISO needed its own dedicated space.
Educating the next generation and enriching the audience experience has always been the Clowes mission. In the early days, the symphony performed lollipop concerts for young people. Education matinees continued to bring busloads of students to the hall annually. And by the 90s, Clowes Hall was a pioneer in using distance learning technology to reach directly into classrooms.
We're one of 12 performing arts centers around the country that was accepted into the very first Kennedy Center Art Centers and Schools program. They educated local artists on how to reach out to teachers to essentially say, here are ways to bring the arts into your classroom. Especially since we at Butler were an educational institution, what better fit could you have to bring the community and the educational components together?
Lifelong learners can attend pre-performance seminars for a more in-depth Clowes experience. What will Clowes look like in another 50 years? If the last half-century is any indication, it will be a reflection of the artists who walk onto its stage, the audience that fills its seats, the city that surrounds its walls. Clowes Memorial Hall is, after all, more than just a structure. It is a monument to the life of a great man, and it continues to entertain a great city.
Clowes is one of the heartbeats of Indianapolis. They bring in comedians, they bring in actors, they bring in touring shows, they bring in orchestras from around the world. I guess you could say it's where it's at.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.